Brain.
It's an old, the date.
Oh, was it Rag, right?
Well, good evening. I call the regular meeting of the Ames City
I went to that
Council
a month and a
for
half ago.
Tuesday, March 14th to order. Is this working
Oh, no.
by design?
Is it on? It is.
There we go. Thank you, I think, Brian. Ready? All right. Well, good evening. I call the regular meeting of the Ames City Council for Tuesday, March 14th to order. Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
And we're going to move right into consent. And I've been asked just to offer a point of clarification, Council, on item 21B. It says resolution awarding a contract to HPC in a not to exceed amount of $145,000. It actually should be $137,580. So with that, does anyone want to pull any item from consent this evening? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve consent with that one minor change.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll move on to public forum. This is time we set aside for comments from the public on topics of city business, and we ask people to take preferably 3 minutes or less. Is there anyone that wants to address council this evening? Seeing none, we'll close public forum.
Is that where okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I open up again.
Thank you.
If you want to introduce yourself, and you may begin.
Hello, I'm Mike Satterwhite, and I'm a longtime Ames resident, and I'm one of the small landlords in town that own a few rental homes, single-family homes. My concern is I recently have been trying to get a letter of compliance on one of my properties that I just brought into service. It was a beat-up house on Hazel. It's owned by a hoarder, I guess, for lack of a better term. That's what I generally do. I buy distressed properties that need a lot of work, and I go in and work on them. Well, I ran into trouble, and I typically haven't had that much trouble with the inspections department in the past. I've always sought the letters of compliance, but I fixed up the basement. I finished off the basement in this place because it was finished quasi but the ceiling was falling down and whatnot, and I could have left all that there, apparently, according to code, but instead I fixed it and I cleaned out all the assorted rodent droppings and everything else and finished the basement off. And then I got told that I needed to pull a permit for that to finish off the basement, which was new to me because in the past, the way things were, if you replace like with like, you didn't really need to pull a permit. Well, apparently a lot of things have changed. And what I was told is that I had to pull down all the sheetrock that I had put up in this basement because I couldn't prove that I had done adequate fire blocking in this basement space. Now, mind you, this is just a rec area. It's not a bedroom. It never will be a bedroom. I've specifically told the tenants they cannot sleep down there because it has no egress window. Okay, it has windows, but not egress windows. But I was told I have to pull down all this sheetrock so that they can see what's back there. Well, and then when I started looking at what this so-called code is, this fire blocking code, which was a mystery to me, and I got it sent, and you know, you guys have received my letter. I think I know Steve Shankers has received my letter, and Sarah wrote me back. Sarah's the supervisor of the inspections department, very gracious, you know, very thorough in addressing my particular concerns, and I understand that she is, you know, the letter in essence says I'm just doing my job. You know, I understand that, and I respect that, but the truth is that the City of Ames Inspections Department has become very heavy-handed when compared to other municipalities around here. And I couldn't get any realtors to back me up here, but you'll have to take me on faith that I'm not lying. When I have all these stories coming at me from realtors, even the Iowa Board of Realtors is supposedly going to be drafting a letter about just how hard it is to do business in the city of Ames with the inspections department, following the letter of the law, if you will, when it comes to inspections. And in fairness, Sarah says, hey, if you want things changed, you got to get the city council to change it, and you gotta go say something. So I'm here saying something needs to be done, because I shouldn't have to pull down all this sheetrock, especially. I'll pull it down, but I'm not going to put it back up because I can't afford to. I just flat cannot afford to. But things are incredibly expensive right now. And if you guys are concerned about the cost of housing in the city of Ames, this is something that really needs to be looked at, because in essence, I was also being told that I can't do most of the work I want to do on my properties because I'm not a insured contractor. I just work on my own places. I don't need to work for anybody else. So I work on my own place. I've been doing this stuff since I was 16 years old. I literally wrote the book on the subject. I wrote 40% of one of the Reader's Digest do-it-yourself manuals. I know a thing or two about it, right? So when I get told this by people that haven't done as much building, and when I look at this, even the stuff that I was told, when I look at the actual fire blocking code that she references and how to do the particular fire blocking, two of the things I was told to do, which was vertical fire blocking, I think every 10 feet, somewhere in the walls. And this is in a basement area, mind you, and as well as unfaced insulation. There's no references to that I can find in this code. I can't see how that's even supposed to be done. And as far as unfaced insulation goes, that goes contrary to, in fact, one of the things that is stated in here, that this insulation needs to be secured in place without facing or some sort of encapsulation on the insulation. In a vertical application, you're not securing it in place. It can slip down. What was it? Do you guys have some questions for me? I had another thought that I was.
No, in this time, we don't really have any dialogue. I will just ask those. What is your specific question?
Well, my request is that the inspection department back off a little bit, because I know that they believe they are protecting the community with these inspections. But the truth is, what protects the community is the investment in the property. This is based on an assumption that homeowners are stupid and they're going to do stupid things with their houses. And I'm flat don't agree with that. These are massive investments now. For most people, it's their biggest investment. They're not out to devalue their property. And if they do, they do. They devalue their property. They'll pay for it when they try to sell it. But with the inspections department trying to micromanage all these aspects of home improvement when it's already incredibly expensive, and being forced really to use contractors in places where they wouldn't otherwise need to. I don't know. It's putting a lot of pressure on homeowners. It's putting a lot of pressure on the processes. For that family that wants to buy a distressed house and build value into it, they're making it really hard.
Okay, so I just want to be clear. You're saying what your request is inspections back off a bit. And I'm browsing through a letter, which all of council got.
Yeah.
The city manager, they got your letter, and the city manager forwarded Sarah Van Metren's response to you, to the entire council, so they're aware of that as well too. She outlined specifically things if you wanted to have changes, but you're not asking for those. All you want to do is have them back off.
Well, I want the fire blocking requirement needs to go away, because it's pretty ridiculous, especially in a basement area. I went so far as I talked to Chief Hackett to get some statistics on basement fires. I am highly cognizant of fires, and I kind of understand why the inspection department might be highlighting this, the notion I think they probably have in their head, this notion that there could be a fire and a bunch of students die one of these days, and they want to prevent that, which I entirely understand. And when you're talking about balloon frame structures, that's a completely legitimate concern. But these codes, that particular code is there primarily for multi-unit dwellings, not for single-family homes and for commercial structures. That's why it was put in there. The one student that did die in a fire in this town was my student, Sonny. I remember that fire. He was a great kid. My brother's been blown up and burned twice
Okay, all right.
I understand fire.
I
so-
appreciate that. Okay, so is there any other requests you have besides those two that you just mentioned?
I would also like the letter of compliance to have a longer shelf life, 5 years.
Okay.
The 2-year requirement they're putting on it right now is too short. 2 and 3 years, it's just too short.
Okay.
Seems like every time we turn around, we have to go through this process again, and it strikes terror into the heart of landlords. It does. It is not something they look forward to.
Anything else?
That's enough, I think.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, now we'll close public input. Move on to item number 30, request from Ames Chamber of Commerce for farmers market. Brian? And maybe the question is, are there any questions for Brian? This seems to be pretty straightforward, and given the amount of snow outside and May 6th coming soon, we're looking forward to farmers market kicking off. Any questions for Brian? All right. Does anyone want to, I'll open up public comment. Anyone want to address the council on this item? All right. Hearing none, we'll close public comment. I'd entertain a motion.
Move.
Alternative 1.
Second.
Okay. And would you just clarify what that alternative is? Not reading the whole thing, but
Yep, just approve the requested street and parking closures from 5:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. on Saturday from May 6th to October 14th.
Okay. All right.
Just
And
clarify.
waiver fees.
It's actually be items 30A through E on the agenda then.
Oh, correct, yeah.
So clarification. So alternative 1 is a waiver of fees except for the parking. It would require reimbursement for the parking.
I didn't catch that either. So, all right, go ahead and explain that to us, Brian, on that.
Number 2.
Yeah. So so alternative 1 would require the farmers market to reimburse for the lost parking meter revenue for the 70 or so parking meters that would be closed during the 24 Saturdays that the market operates. Alternative 2 would be to approve all the requests, including the waiver of parking that has been requested. Historically, the council has approved a waiver of the parking meter fees, although
You got to flip flop that thing.
no.
That's why it's written in the
Right.
Historically, the council has approved a waiver
I'm
of
just talking about.
all of the fees, including the parking meter fees. However, we've consistently pointed out as staff that there's the parking fund is not in the greatest of health compared to other funds, and
Sorry.
given the amount, it might be wise to require reimbursement, but it's up to the city council.
So just for point of clarification, there is an amount budgeted every year for meter reimbursement that excludes farmers market. Is that correct?
Farmers market isn't one of the
Okay.
requests that receives where a request is made to reimburse the parking fund. The council's policy regarding parking meter reimbursement is that if it's for a closure of parking that's not district wide, it's considered on a case by case basis whether you would require reimbursement or not.
Mayor, I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Okay.
Oh.
Brian, historically, we have waived this. This would be the first year we've asked farmers market to pay. Is that correct?
I think historically we've brought it to you outside the consent agenda where you can decide whether you want to agree.
But historically, we waived it.
You've historically waived the parking fees.
And
This is also a larger amount of parking than we normally do, right? These are behind Main Street.
These are just the metered spots they're talking about,
This is
which is
just
the
the
same
cost
as
of
it's
the
been in the
on-street.
past. The ones behind, there's no reimbursement for that because they're just 2 or 4 hour limit.
so the farmers market, what they have to do is they'll have to go to the vendors and ask them for additional fees in order to do this. And if our goal is to encourage the farmers market. The fewer barriers to this, the better. I'm going to instead move alternative 2, where we would cover this. It's $2,025. It's not worth worrying about.
Is there a second?
Second.
Move to second for discussion.
I mean, I guess, we just keep hearing the message about the parking funds. So that's, why staff were recommending option 1. I mean, I think there could be other ways that they could get $2,000, but I don't know. Anybody else have thoughts on that?
Any other comments? Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Motion failed.
Move alternative 1.
Second.
Move to second. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Very good. Move on to item number 31. Mark?
Good evening. I've asked Chief Huff to join me on this just so we could have his perspective too. The council had directed that I prepare a memo on, excuse me, the issue of issue of a person living in a city bus. And I know the council members have received emails and communications from citizens about this, about a bus that's parked on city streets and the person is actually making that their home. And I prepared a memo discussing sort of some options. I do want to just sort of update the memo a little bit because I've continued to do some legal research and I have found that there have been some communities that have passed ordinances specifically prohibiting people from living in their vehicles. That's been defined in various ways. San Diego actually did that and was challenged, and initially it was upheld by a state court, and then someone else challenged it in federal court, and the federal court struck it down as unconstitutionally vague. And then San Diego, as I mentioned in my memo, turned around and passed an ordinance prohibiting people from sleeping in their cars overnight. So that was a response to that. The city of Clearwater, Florida, passed an ordinance that prohibits people from living in their vehicles, and that was upheld by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. So, it's not. And another decision, the one from California, was in the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals came out the other way, where they ruled it was unconstitutionally vague. So sort of a difference in the federal appeals courts, and it might be a difference in how the ordinances are written too. I haven't done a lengthy analysis of the words that are in the ordinance. If that's a route that the council wants to take, certainly we would spend a lot of care looking at that. My concern, and I expressed this in the memo, was that the ordinances might be viewed as unconstitutionally vague. That is the same reasoning courts have used to strike down vagrancy laws and loitering laws, which are, generally unconstitutional. You just don't see those anymore. And so, that is the sort of the state of the situation here, is that it's not really known whether a court challenge to this in Iowa would, and up to the 8th Circuit or U.S. Supreme Court, how the courts would rule on it. So I can't say definitively that it would be unconstitutional to take that approach. I have concerns about it, but I think it's an open question legally about whether you would have the authority to do that. So anyway, that's where that's at. I also addressed some other issues in the memo, talking about some length of vehicle restrictions, and some other cities in Iowa have implemented restrictions on the size of vehicles that can be on the streets, length and width. I will say, in addition to the school bus, I know we've had situations. In fact, there's someone in my office who says that they've had a semi truck parked, a day or two on the street in a residential area where they live. And so, semis would pose some of the same problems for people driving, and so a limitation on the size would help with that, as well as the current situation that you're looking at. But anyway, that's sort of my summary on it. And I don't know if Chief wants to add anything at this point, or just wait till council ask questions, or
It might be better to hear what questions you have.
So how widespread is the problem, in your opinion?
So there's a few issues. We have an individual issue that I know you've all received complaints about. That's one thing, but we do get complaints about other vehicles around town, larger vehicles. It in some areas makes it more difficult to travel. It affects sight lines for drivers. So we have had some issues in the past with other vehicles, and it's usually due to size.
Okay.
So it does come up from time to time.
Okay.
But as far as people living in vehicles, how many?
This really is the only one I can think of that's gone on as long as this. I'm sure we've had it happen. It just hasn't come to our attention. I think because of the size of the vehicle is the reason that it's coming to everyone's attention frequently.
And I will say, in the time I've been in the city attorney's office, I've been aware of a situation, at least one situation, where there was an RV that was parking in a neighborhood, and it would move every 48 hours a little bit just to keep it legal. And the neighbors were upset about that. They would run their, generator in the RV and make noise, the air conditioner or whatever. But so I know there's been at least one situation. I don't know if that was just someone visiting friends and parked their RV on the street for a few days, but we have heard of these kind of incidents in the past.
We have the 48-hour parking code, which is generally the complaint that we get, that the vehicle's parked too long. In a lot of these cases, we go out, we mark the vehicle, and they move. And so it's kind of this game that we get stuck in the middle of going out, marking a vehicle every other day. They move it, they go back out, we get the complaint again. So it's really, that's not the right tool to fix some of these problems. It's kind of putting a square peg in a round hole. It's not the right tool for this job. So it's just not working. I know that there's a lot of people in the neighborhood that are upset, and I understand why they're upset. But right now, there isn't a violation that we can address. And as long as it moves every 48 hours, which it does.
And I noted in my memo that there are some cities that have ordinances that require that after the 48-hour, or in some cases it's a 24-hour period, that the vehicle has to be moved at least 1 block away or 1 mile away from their previous location. That spreads the problem around, but doesn't really solve the problem.
I don't see that as a good fix either, because we've got people that, students especially, that park on the street and they move every other day. It's not reasonable to move a mile. That doesn't make any sense. They're actually parking near the residence. So I don't think that's probably not a great fix either.
I don't know that. I mean, I guess I think it's maybe a problem that doesn't need fixing, or I'm not keen really to add any prohibitions on parking or even at this point length of vehicle. I don't see it as a big problem. I think we've gotten a few complaints about an individual case, but that's kind of my take. So I'm not really interested in that. I would entertain something like thinking about if we would want to offer a little RV park, mini RV park, 10 spaces, well lit, monitored, and allow people the choice to go there. But I don't even know that I'm willing to say I'd force them to go there to park. But to offer that maybe as an option is something that I'd be willing to think about. but I don't know that there's a solution in trying to get at the problem with more, more stringent parking code. So that's just my take.
Other questions or comments for staff?
So, Mayor, how are we going to do this? Is there going to be public input?
Yep.
Okay.
It strikes me that one of the issues with this particular case is not just that someone is living in a vehicle, it's that there are household goods scattered outside the vehicle in the right of way. And that to me sounds like a different problem. And maybe that's something that is more easily addressed than whether the person is living there or not. And I don't even know. It seems to me that would be easier to address, but maybe it's not.
So we have had that come up, and there isn't the inspections code already speaks to that. So you can't stack items outside the vehicle in the right of way. And so we have had on a couple of occasions, we've assisted inspections going out and making sure those items were removed because you can't do that.
Yep.
I mean, there are other issues I think that are concerning. There's a wood burning stove inside of it. That's concerning to me because you have a vehicle that moves from time to time with a wood burning stove inside of it. There are animals living inside of it as well. I don't know if the conditions are necessarily appropriate. I don't think our animal control supervisor believes they probably are. So there's a number of issues. I hate to see an ordinance to address a one-person problem in town.
Exactly.
I understand that, and I'm not really in favor of that either. But for the people that live in the neighborhoods where this continues to park, I understand their frustration. I'll be honest, I would not want it parked in front of my house either, burning wood, the smell of that. So I don't know that there's an easy fix either.
Can you describe what provisions are for running water or sewer for this facility?
I'm sorry.
Is there running water or sanitary sewers to the?
No.
So I guess one question comes to mind is,
I don't know that that's any of our business.
well,
I mean,
from the
like,
standpoint, a person
could haul that
person
away.
could not live in a house. They would not get a rental permit. They would not get an occupancy permit without water, sewer, or power run to it. And they'd also have a code governing. I mean, if it was just an overnight situation, it's one thing, but if it's a long-term housing situation,
You could easily haul that to a public bathroom and dispose of it, though, couldn't you? Any sort of waste? I don't know. I just,
Yeah.
I'm back to my point is that if you would not be able to get an occupancy permit for any permanent house for someone to occupy without water, sewer, power, safe heating system provided. So how can a vehicle qualify for safe, habitable accommodations for somebody?
it's not
Safer
under.
to be sheltered than not. I'm personally not very interested in anything with one or two, a ban on using a vehicle to live in or sleeping in a vehicle. I would maybe be willing to do something with limitations for vehicles over a certain size, but I don't want to touch anything with options 1 or 2.
Other comments?
And I would agree. Having worked with the school district, there are a number of families that are homeless. And the idea of criminalizing them because they don't have adequate resources. So I am concerned, but I am open to if there is a way to address something that is unhealthy for individuals.
I think that's my main concern as well. The wood burning stove and the situation with the animals seems to me to be something that is not addressed or should not be addressed with a parking code. And I don't know where that falls. Is that something that should fall under inspections? Is it something else? It seems to be a safe housing issue, but I don't believe it's covered currently under our code.
Mark, I'm curious if you had any chance to visit with any of the neighbors who have had to have this bus in front of their home.
No, I have not.
And so is it possible that they could explore a private nuisance cause of action? Is that a possibility?
Sure, that'd be a possibility. I mean, yeah, they could seek legal counsel and consult with them on whether they would have a cause of action and what the remedy could be.
Yeah. So, I mean, these are just sort of preliminary conversations. We haven't even, I hope there's going to be some public input. Maybe there won't be. But so I think this is a very difficult issue. We want to be compassionate for those who have very difficult choices and are forced to live in a vehicle, or maybe they're doing this by choice. But on the other hand, we speak often about the importance of considering neighborhoods. And when we have an opportunity to really address the well-being of our neighborhoods, we're not going to consider the neighbors. I find that hard to understand. So one of the good benchmarks for things that come before council is, would I want to live across the street from this? And for people who have made sizable investments in their home, this is where they spend their time, where they raise their children. I don't think they contemplate a vehicle parked outside their home that's got someone then living there. And I don't think that this is being mean-spirited to want to protect people's property interests from that vehicle. So I'm looking forward to a discussion. I hope we don't just summarily turn from this. It's not a matter of criminalizing it in the same way that our other criminal actions are, but people don't have the right to build a shelter in our parks. They don't have that right. We have the ability to regulate that. And so I see this as something very similar. We have the right to regulate what goes on in our streets. And I think we shouldn't place those residents of our community in a place where they have to bring a private cause of action. It should be reasonable for them to look to us as a city council to find a resolution.
Any other comments? All right, we'll open up public comment. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this topic tonight? Seeing none, we'll close public input.
So Mark, can you talk a little bit about how it might look if we try to address, I think there's maybe agreement amongst a few of us up here that we need to do something to address the nuisance that's being created in the neighborhoods. And this could be for anything. I realize we're talking about one specific case, but I think we often talk about nuisance issues when it comes to neighborhoods and the quality of life that people expect in their neighborhood. And
Right.
so I think we need to focus on that piece. And I just don't, that's not really touched upon in the staff report or the memo. So.
Right. Well, in terms of the piling things outside the vehicle, that's been an ongoing issue. And Jeff mentioned that the inspections of the police have gone out and dealt with that many times. I don't know if that's still going on or, but
What does that look like though? I mean, we're just having them clean it up and then that's the end.
They have to clean it up within a certain period of time, not do it again is the goal.
Right.
But there is a fine for it that inspections could impose for continued violations. I'm not as familiar with that code
Yep.
though.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Certainly, I mean, I'd have to do some research on like the fire code and, the wood burning stove that's in the vehicle and whether there might be, whether the fire code would even apply in that situation. I suspect it might not, but we could look at that.
When it comes to the nuisance of that, though, we allow that in other circumstances. So I can burn wood in a fire pit in my back, in a graded, it's got to be contained, but I can do that in my backyard.
I look at that as
Um,
more of a safety issue than
Yeah, I
the
mean,
nuisance of smoke.
Mhm.
sure.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Right. I just mean, yeah, for in terms of people not appreciating that about
Right.
this situation, that's something that we would allow other people to do. No, the safety issue, I mean, maybe there's something there. I don't know if that would be like a DOT issue since it's a vehicle, like maybe, uh, you know, uh,
I would have to dig into that more. That's I don't know that there's a clear answer to that. Or maybe it's just one of those things that's sort of outside everyone's jurisdiction. But I can certainly look into that more.
I can't help thinking that this is ironic that we are discussing this as a safety issue when we just heard from a member of the public about fire code and rental properties. And we have always said that fire code is a safety concern and it's there to protect individuals. And yet we may not have the ability to regulate something like this. And the school bus has a gas tank on it. And I mean, it just seems like it could be dangerous
probably
to others
diesel.
as well as whoever is living there. But again, I don't know where this falls in the code.
Is there anything within the definition of what a dwelling is? And again, I'm just kind of trying to explore what are other things other than making it about this individual that would be of interest to us.
Yeah. The I don't have the fire code in front of me, but I mean, typically when you're talking about a dwelling, you're talking about a house, an apartment, a structure. Whether that would apply in this case, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think this would take some discussion with fire department and inspections and to try to sort of pin down if there's anything we can do in that regard or some enforcement action we can take.
Thanks.
So Mark, if we went with 3A, which is to limit the size of vehicles that can be parked on city streets, would you want to have the opportunity to come back and present us with some options for that?
Yes. And, I think we'd want to take a look at the size and have some discussions with, the police and public works, traffic division about, the size of vehicles. As I looked at other ordinances that limit the size of vehicles, they vary a lot. So I think we'd have to come up with our own numbers and not just copy someone else's numbers, but something that everyone kind of felt comfortable with.
And I do like the objectivity for law enforcement officers. When you have a prohibition against human habitation, then there's a subjective element as to whether that person is actually living in that vehicle. And I was reading some discussions about a Los Angeles case where it was difficult for law enforcement officers to enforce. And so I do like that. Ultimately, if somebody wants to live in a VW Bug, then that's going to be a little more difficult to address. But I think this would be a start and maybe a way for us to begin seeing if this is workable. So I'm going to move that we ask staff to come back with options on the size of vehicles under 3A.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
Is it possible to add on to that these other investigations like into safety and?
I'd like that in a separate motion if we could.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't want to support any changes because I really feel like this is, to borrow a phrase from Tim, a solution in search of a problem. We're making these decisions based on one case that's been brought to us, and there might have been some other issues in the past, right? But this is not a big, rampant problem in Ames that we hear about all the time. where I'm at.
And I agree with you, Bronwyn. I don't like the idea of us forming a statute based on one resident sort of forcing our hand. But ultimately, I'm not sure we have a choice. We have a duty to our residents to make sure that they can reasonably enjoy the investment they've made, and it affects their quality of life. And so I think this is a reasonable step. I think it's one that is enforceable. And I'm sorry there's not more public input tonight, but hopefully this would give the Tribune and the Daily an opportunity to tell more about this story and receive greater input.
All right, those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
All right. Before I decide whether to break a tie or not, this would come back as a ordinance, is that right, ultimately?
Well, ultimately, but as I understood the motion, it was to come back with sort of the plan of what an ordinance would look like and maybe some options within that to let the council.
I'll vote aye.
Okay.
Any other motions?
I would move that we ask staff to look at those other issues of safety, and I don't know how to describe that, but to come back with
The fire issue specifically?
fire issue, and I also think the animal issue,
habitation.
Okay,
and
those two.
where motor vehicles fit into our current ordinance, and if we have the means to regulate
there a
these concerns.
Second.
Grace, is that clear enough for you in terms of a motion, or do you want some?
That sounds right.
And what options we have.
And what- Okay, great, thank you.
I'm going to be supportive of this, but I have one question just from a jurisdictional perspective. We have greater rights to require things with respect to buildings and dwelling units than vehicles. Mark, could you speak to the question of jurisdiction here?
Yeah. Well, and that's, I said that earlier. I don't know that we have jurisdiction over it, but that's one thing we'd have to look at. Certainly we do with buildings, but cars that are licensed by the state that are on the city streets, I would, we may not have the same kind of jurisdiction over them, but I have to do a deep dive into that to sort that out. And I don't have an answer for you.
Okay,
tonight,
sure.
So.
Thanks.
All right, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Any other motions on this topic? All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Move on to item 32, staff report on request to initiate comprehensive plan amendment for the corners of Cameron School Road on George Washington Carver.
Here we go. Good evening. Excuse my cold. The request tonight is to possibly initiate a land use amendment to Plan 2040. If you recall, back in December, so somewhat recently, Blossom Dankbar Farms, this is a larger development area, came in for a rezoning with a master plan that included some FSRL, FSRM, and an ag piece. That ag piece is approximately this area in here, and it was about 20 acres. They left that out of the master plan as far as showing any type of dwelling units or development there, because the intention is for church to go there, and working through, what steps, what zoning, things like that. They weren't ready to move forward with rezoning that. So currently, this 20-acre area, which is about approximately this area, has the RN3 designation and the NC, which is neighborhood core designation. So how we got to this point, Plan 2040 is fairly new. The LUPP plan in 2017, we kind of had floating nodes. There wasn't one originally shown here. The same developer that's requesting this initiation, had asked for a commercial node to be placed here because they thought that because of the residential that already existed in the area and residential development that would be coming online in the future, that it may be beneficial and worthwhile to have some commercial up there. That was a convenience commercial node. It was mostly auto oriented with that type of an intention, a gas station, a convenience store, things along those lines. They're now requesting to remove this node and make the entire thing RN3. The request really kind of staff's laid out in the report. There is another commercial node in this area, which is neighborhood commercial mixed use. And if the city and Plan 2040 and our future vision for this area, if it really matters if this commercial node stays, and what type of commercial do we see that fits best out here. The neighborhood commercial mixed use area over here, this is a Borgmeyer farm that we have planned for development to grow into in the future. It's always been shown as with the intention of having more of a village style or more urban intensive commercial similar to Somerset. And then that neighborhood commercial again is more audit oriented. We included a table in a small table, and that gives you kind of an idea to visualize a built commercial area that would be similar. So that top one in in that table is the Fairways and Casey's. That would be equivalent to the type of commercial we have intended to, or this neighborhood core designation intends to occur here. And then that mixed use, this is more in line of what you would see at Somerset down at on Stang. So that kind of gives you a visualization of and an idea how to fit those through. Population estimates with Plan 2040, that number of houses that could come online and what that means for as far as population would support about 10 acres. And that's what is planned and has been shown on this piece is the 10 acres piece. So really, commercial Plan 2040 supports commercial in both places. Since the node was initially requested and shown in 2017, and the other commercials are not up for redevelopment, that's basically, we just assigned that commercial designation to this corner since that's the developer that requested it. If you did not initiate it and it stays as is, there's still 15 acres available for the church to develop on, and it would go through a rezoning and most likely a special use permit based on the zoning districts that would correspond to allow a church there. They would not be required to develop that 5 acres of commercial. However, they couldn't develop it a different way. So they could sell it, they could sit on it, leave it vacant. They could sell it to another developer, or again, you remove the node, the whole thing goes to RN3, and it's the whole 20 acres is supported for that church development. So really it comes down to the type of commercial you see in this part of Ames and what it could support and how it would function. So the two options that we laid out in the staff report are really to initiate the change, or keep it as is. And I can answer questions if you have any.
One clarification.
Mhm.
So would there be any limitations in the Borgmeyer commercial? So if there was a desire to put a convenience store there, would that be a possibility in that designation?
I think it would really depend on how many total acres go there. Gas station and convenience store, like you see typical on a corner today. That's not what's envisioned here. If it was just say, like a Lincoln Way, there's just a Quick Trip storefront that's just convenience. Like, yes, that would be, our code does see a gas station different from a convenience store.
I see.
The zoning does.
There are very few gas stations on the north side of town, and so I just want to make sure that we're keeping that in mind, that make sure we have locations that are convenient.
Although this was within the range in the old LUPP, that would say we shouldn't have rezoned it because it was too close to the other commercial node up on.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
In the staff report, we provide a little bit more history than I explained in the presentation. Staff did not support moving that commercial node to this intersection. Council ultimately agreed with the developer that it might be needed and be able to be supported. So it did pass with a 6-0 vote. So it was a unanimous vote by council to put that designation there.
And did I see that in the emails you gave us that the Lutheran Church of Hope has already purchased the full 20 acres, right?
Yes.
Including
Yeah, I spoke with Mr. Friedrich on Friday, and it's my understanding that they have closed on the property. So, and anything that would, the staff report also says the site you saw an annexation agreement a couple years ago. You've seen a master plan and a zoning agreement. All of those took this scenario into account when those were created, and we had discussions with the developer. So all those conditions and criteria would remain. None of those would change.
Other questions? All right, we'll open up public comment. Anyone want to address council on this item?
Good evening, everyone. Kurt Friedrich, Friedrich Companies, 106th Street. Thanks for considering our request here tonight. And I made the request because at the time I was the property owner. And as Julie mentioned, we did convey the 20 acres here just this last week to Lutheran Church of Hope. And thanks for the context too, Julie. I want to provide maybe a little more context. So the request to add the commercial node was made. We've owned the property for 8 years. And the request was made back in 2017. And so I just wanted to illustrate that a fair amount of time has passed between the time that it was determined to establish the commercial node and today, better than 6 years. And over time, circumstances do change. And that is certainly the case here. You all have been working for some time now on a 2040 plan, which is now in place. And that is influencing here, I think, largely the development of the area going forward. And that area, I think, that is planned over in the Borgmeyer farm for commercial is actually up to as much as 20 acres, between 10 and 20 acres. So it's a fairly substantial amount of commercial area there. And if it were absolutely deemed appropriate, Tim, to your question, I think a land use amendment could be enacted on the property if that were deemed appropriate. I'm not saying that it is, but I think that there would be opportunity to do that. We did do some extra due diligence here in terms of informing some of the people and entities that occupy land in the area about this proposed change. And I believe that you've received several emails that came in, and the executive pastor for Christ Community Church that owns the 75 acres just immediately to the north across the street, which in this period of time has also constructed recreational property just to the north that is used for upward football and cheerleading, is directly across the street. That church group is fully supportive of Lutheran Church of Hope's request to eliminate this 5-acre commercial node, as they see it being congruent with their use of their own site as well, and are excited to see Lutheran Church of Hope come to the neighborhood. I've also reached out to a couple of the other property owners, a large single-family property owner there just across the street, Dr. Jamie Wydert, has expressed his support for the elimination of the commercial node in an email to you, as well as Dave Jameson, who lives immediately adjacent to the property, has expressed his support for this request. And again, the 20 acres has been conveyed. And to Julie's point, they could currently just use the 15 acres, but it is their desire to use the full 20 acres. And so we are, as the developer of the land adjacent, we are supportive also of this request for them to be able to fully use the site for their intended purposes. We think that having Hope as a part of the community here will be a real anchor for the subdivision, an asset to our community. So I'd urge, I think it's alternative 1. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Chris Canary, Lutheran Church of Hope. I run from my West Des Moines office. I oversee operations at all of our campuses. And about 20 acres may sound like a lot. One, it's nothing compared to our 75 to our friends to the north has. But two, this property is unique. And we knew about it coming in. It's got a gas line going right through the middle of it, a supply line right about where the light brown and the dark brown change colors that we cannot build on. So if you ever try to build or do Legos when you can't put a building in the center, it really restricts your space. We knew that, but we felt the location was strong enough we could get around that with the 20 acres. We've also found our West Des Moines property started at 22 acres. We've outgrown that and added 5 more. Our Ankeny property, which is relatively pretty new, just entered its second phase and bought 5 more acres to get to 25 acres as well. Our Grimes property, we went to 15, and I can tell you as we're looking at our phase 2 plans right now, it's a bit tight in the spacing. So as the new Ames landowner, and we're excited to be here in Ames. Danny's been working at Ames a long time doing ministry, but in addition to purchasing what we call the Link on Lincoln Way, where we do college ministry in midweek, and we do our worship services right here in the auditorium, great facility. We're excited for this space, but obviously we're not in the commercial business. We like to transform lives and serve the community. That's why Ankeny's largest food pantry right now is at one of our campuses in Ankeny. So as Danny and his team looks for the needs of the community, that's what we come here to satisfy and to do that. So I'll let Danny come up on the ministry side. If there's any questions operationally, I'm happy to answer. But thank you for being here and thank you for your service.
Yeah, like Chris said, my name is Danny Householder. I'm a pastor ordained by the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, also known as the ELCA, and I'm serving my first call as a pastor for Lutheran Church of Hope here in Ames, and I have been for the last almost 6 years. We love being a part of the Ames community. Ultimately, as a congregation, our hope and mission is to be an asset to this community, and therefore we absolutely submit to the leadership and decisions made by the city, and we want to do what's best for this community. I hope that our reputation and the work that we do would prove that we would be a blessing to this part of the community and hopefully the overall community of Ames. We've got a lot of people in the congregation who are very excited about it. Once upon a time, we had looked at potentially just purchasing 15 acres, and the church showed a lot of enthusiasm. Over 200 families committed to pledging and raising funds to be able to purchase 20 acres. And I think that over the last 6 years, it's been really exciting to see the different mission partnerships that we've been able to create and develop. And I do believe that having a permanent location here in Ames, and hopefully with the 20 acres, including that corner, would allow us to continue to make a difference in this community. That's our hope.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? All right, we'll close public comment. Any follow-up questions for Julie, can you comment just on, is there city water and sewer out there, or how is that? working out?
Well, so you will see fairly soon a PRD and preliminary plat for the FSRL area, which is over here. But sewer will come up from Scenic Valley subdivision, up from Everest and from Cartier. That will serve the site. And then this will be one of the first developments that falls under that Xenia territory agreement, where it will be served by Xenia. But they will have to build to our standards. We'll review the plans. It has to meet all of our criteria, but it will be Xenia water.
Julie, where again is the gas line? Could you show that?
Yeah, it is. I want to say it's like a 60-foot easement. If you right here, you could kind of see there's a structure about right here when you drive by, and then it is just straight north south up through the site, and it does provide some design constraints for them. They will be able to cross it with like driveways and such, because that's what they've been allowed to do to the church to the north, because it does run through that property as well. But no structures or buildings or things like that will be able to be placed within that easement.
Okay, thanks.
Is a Plex on Xenia water?
I don't know. Xenia or well, I guess I don't
Okay.
know that off
I was
the
just
top of
curious. I
my
mean,
head.
the reason I asked is that when you start getting, church structures that you're going to have these fire sprinkled,
Yeah.
and so you have water pressure issues, and obviously if it was city water, no big deal. And we know that the agreement that was struck with Xenia, they have to provide what the pressures are, but it's different for housing.
Right.
And
Yeah,
something that I was just more curious. It's not an issue on the whether you should do it commercial or not commercial. I was just curious. That's all. All right. Any further questions? Otherwise, entertain a motion.
Move option 1.
Second.
Thank you. Move second. You want to just quantify what that is?
Initiate a minor land use amendment for a residential neighborhood 3 RN3 designation.
For the full 20-acre site. Mhm. Yep. All right. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Very good. Thanks, Julie. Thank you for coming. Moving on to item number 33, resolution setting March 28th, 2023 for date of public hearing on option agreement for sale of lot 27. Miss Vanessa is here, and she is bravely coming with a voice which is.
Good evening. Just have a dry throat. This is the next step.
So the question, maybe the best way to go is staff have council have any questions regarding this particular item?
I got it.
Sounds terrible.
All right.
Vanessa, could you go back to the history of this property? No?
Any questions for staff on this? I think the report is well done. All right, we'll open a public comment. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this particular item? Hearing none, we will close public input. And is there a motion on resolution setting March 28th, 2023 as date of public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, all right. Let the motion show that the entire paragraph on the agenda is roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right, item 34. Any questions for me?
Mayor, I do have to. There's been a typo on the council action form.
Okay,
In the box, under bidders, it should say GTG and not GTC Construction LLC. So I'd like to have that corrected for the minutes. Thank you.
so the agenda says GTG. That is correct. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Any questions for Vanessa?
We almost awarded the wrong company the contract.
Mm.
Embarrassing.
All right. We'll open up public input. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public input. Entertain motion on resolution awarding the contract to GTG Construction LLC of Johnston, Iowa for remodeling of ACPC infant room remodel in the amount of not to exceed $94,600.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 All right, moving on to item number 35, hearing on Baker subdivision. And again, the staff report was very thorough. Is there any questions for Vanessa on this item? All right, declare the public hearing on this item to be open. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this item? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on resolution approving purchase agreement for the sale of city-owned Lot 8 in the Baker subdivision to Habitat for Humanity of Central Iowa.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Abstain, conflict?
Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Good luck with that voice.
Move on to item number 36, hearing on zoning text amendment to eliminate rooftop solar panel zoning requirements. Benjamin.
Good evening. Late last year, the council received a request to amend and reduce some of the requirements, the code requirements and standards for solar energy systems. And council referred that to staff specifically for removing requirements for rooftop solar energy systems. The proposed zoning ordinance changes do not alter the requirements that roof-mounted systems comply with building or electrical codes, or that the does not change any relationship between the property owner and the electric service provider. Only roof-mounted systems are addressed by this proposed text amendment. Freestanding and wall-mounted are not addressed. The Planning Commission did meet last month to discuss the proposed text amendment. They had a robust discussion and did only make a recommendation on the items 4, 5, and 6 in the summary on page 2. They did not make a recommendation on 1, 2, and 3. And staff does recommend approval of the changes to the zoning ordinance as shown in attachment B.
Thank you for the summary. Questions for Benjamin?
Benjamin, could you talk a little bit more about some of the themes that emerged from planning and zoning? I'm in favor of the proposal tonight, but I think it's important that I want to make sure we've heard clearly from planning and zoning.
Yeah, there was concern by some of the commissioners that removing requirements for the distance between the roof and the panels would lead to undesirable aesthetic results. Removing the height requirements, there was also concern that would lead to undesirable aesthetics. I would categorize most of the concern as surrounding aesthetics.
And I'm not discounting them because they're aesthetic. That's part of what they do, is they help make the community, maintain a certain appearance. Based on your review of what other cities have done, would you say that this proposal is consistent with what other communities are doing?
Yeah, I did look at several other communities in Iowa, and every city does it differently, of course. I would say that our current requirements are broadly in line with what other cities in Iowa are doing. Some of them have different distances between the roof and the panels. I would say that our current distance, 6 inches, is on the low side. That's the maximum distance between the roof and the panels. Several feet is what some of the other cities allow.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? What permits are required, if any, because of connecting to electrical systems when you do, is that anything, does this address any of that at all?
The electrical permit itself or
Mhm.
connecting
Yeah,
with the
so
service provider?
Does the, I know we're trying to make this simple or simpler, but I was just curious what would remain in place?
Yeah, so if we so if we eliminate the zoning permit, then it won't come to the planning staff at all. You would just go straight to the electrical provider, and you would still need to get building and electrical permits from our inspections division.
Thank you. It just, in case someone's watching or listening, that it's not eliminating all permits. There still is a requirement from a safety standpoint of attachment of panels and make sure it doesn't blow off, as well as
Correct.
you're dealing with connecting to electric services, essentially. So that still is required and will be inspected.
Correct. Yeah, and the building inspection also, they're looking at the roof and whether it can support the weight of the panels and things like that.
Very good. All right. I'll open up public comment. Or actually, I'll declare a public hearing on the zoning text amendment to be open. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this particular item? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
What item are we on?
We're on item number 36, which is zoning text amendment to eliminate rooftop solar panel zoning requirements.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, we'll declare the public hearing to be closed. Any further questions for Benjamin? Otherwise, I entertain a motion on first passage of ordinance.
Move on first passage.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Thanks, Benjamin. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 37, hearing on 2021-2022 Accessibility Enhancement Program. Declare the public hearing on this item to be open. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion accepting reported bids.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. And entertain a motion on resolution approving final plan specifications and awarding the contract to Caliber Concrete LLC of Adair, Iowa, in the amount of $179,758.01.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Moving on to item number 38, declare the public hearing on 2022-2023 asphalt pavement improvements to Oakwood Road to be open. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this project? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion accepting reported bids.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Entertain motion on resolution approving final plans and specifications and awarding contract to Construct Incorporated of Ames, Iowa, in the amount of $2,034,969.90.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Item number 39, declare the public hearing on the 2022-2023 concrete pavement improvements to Brookridge Avenue, Ridgewood Avenue, Lee Street, 9th Street, Parkway, and an alley to be open. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion accepting reported bids and directing staff to delay award of contract.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Item 40, declare the public hearing on airport underground electric line crossing project to be open. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, declare the public hearing on this project to be closed. Entertain a motion accepting reported bids.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. And entertain a motion on resolution approving final plans and specifications and awarding the contract to Voltner Incorporated of Decorah, Iowa, in the amount of $217,375.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Okay. Moving on to item number 41. Declare the public hearing on the North River Valley well field and pipeline project to be open. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion accepting reported bids and directing staff to delay award of contract.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Item 42. I'll declare or I'll open public comment on the first reading of an ordinance to amend Ames Municipal Code Chapters 23 and 28 for utility connections and fees and rural water buyout fees. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this ordinance? Seeing none, declare the public input to be closed. Entertain motion on first reading of the ordinance to amend the code, Chapter 23 and 28 for utility connection and fees and rural water buyout fees.
Move on first.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. And entertaining a motion on second passage of ordinance relating to zoning text amendment for front yard parking and driveway standards.
Move on second.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 And item 44, entertain a motion on second passage of ordinance relating to zoning text amendment on lot standards related to minimum floor area ratios.
Move on second.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. And you saw in the packet that there was a request for consideration of waiving the rules and entertaining third passage and adoption of the ordinance. Is there an interest in by council to do that?
I would move
Go ahead.
we waive the
Rules.
rules.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. So I entertain a motion on third passage of ordinance relating to zoning text amendment on lot standards related to minimum floor area ratios and adoption of said ordinance.
Move on third.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Moving on to item 45. Entertain motion on second passage of ordinance to rezone a portion of the parcel located at 325 Billy Sunday Road from SGA to HOC.
Move on second.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 And moving on to 46. Entertain motion on second passage of ordinance revising section 28.309 of the Ames Municipal Code to amend the industrial pretreatment local limits.
Move on second.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. And move on to item 47. Entertain motion on third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4491 relating to Ragbri events on July 24th through 26th, 2023.
Mayor? Mayor?
Oh, excuse me.
Wait, I sent an email out to the council requesting that the council adopt an amendment to this ordinance. It's a very simple amendment, just in section 34.4 of the what will be section 34.4 of the code that's in the ordinance, just to change the date of March 6th to March 20th, because we thought the ordinance would be in place, one meeting ago. So we set the date of March 6th, but our intent was to set it right after the ordinance became effective. And so it'll become effective on Friday, and then March 20th will be the Monday after that. So if someone could just move to change that March 6th reference to March 20th.
In what section?
34.4.
34.4.
I apologize. I certainly
So moved.
missed that email.
Second.
Thank you. All right.
Move third passage as amended.
Well, we got,
We
yeah,
have
vote
to
on that
vote on it.
first.
Make
Those
a-
in favor of those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Amendment passed. Now I entertain a motion on third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4491 as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. We'll move on to disposition of communications to council. There's three items. One is from Will Detterman regarding O'Neill Park ball field. And I think that council also received some email from the president, chairperson of Oak Riverside neighborhood with some feedback also. So is there any interest in taking this up or referring it to staff, or just respectfully decline?
Mayor, isn't this the kind of thing that we receive lots of suggestions about parks that would normally just go to Keith and he would respond?
Yes.
I move that we refer this to Keith Abraham for a response.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Next is a memo from John Joyner regarding waste to energy statistics. I think this is for our information.
Correct. No action required.
And then the third is letter from Dorothy Sloma concerning the CO2 pipeline. And council, I asked that this be included in the dispositions. 'Cause I didn't feel right to go ahead and register one way or the other, or just to ignore it. And so I looking for your direction in terms of, is there, the request was to encourage towns and residents to file letters objecting to their projects. Is there a desire to do that, or is it just thank you for the information and no action on it?
Seems to me the two pipelines are outside the city limits, and so I'm not sure that it's our place to register a feeling on this. Story County already has done so, I believe.
Okay. I'll just say, absent any motion, I'll just I'll send her a note thanking her and sharing with her that that's the perspective in terms of it's not in the city. All right, we'll move on to council comments. Gloria?
We heard earlier in the meeting from Mr. Satterwhite regarding concerns that Steve sent us a memo from Sarah about, but I am interested in getting a memo on the fire blocking requirement, because I believe Sarah suggested that was an alternative in her memo. And I would also be interested in getting a memo on the requirement that we have licensed contractors working on rental properties, because it seems like we have inspections in place to ensure that work is done right. And if having requirements for licensed contractors is actually an impediment for some people to work on their own rental properties, then it seems like that might not be a necessary requirement. So I would move that we get a memo addressing those two concerns.
I'll second.
Grace, did you get that?
Yep, you want a memo from staff concerning the fire blocking requirement and the current requirements from licensed contractors to be the one working on properties.
On rental properties, yeah.
Okay. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Moving on from that, I would also move that we put on a future agenda my request to allocate $10,000 for the ribbon cutting and potential Juneteenth celebration for the airport/Juneteenth, which Vanessa is working on organizing. So that's my motion.
You mean-
Future agenda to discuss it.
Related to the airport renaming.
Yes, the airport renaming.
All right.
Second.
This is placing on future agenda for discussion.
Mhm.
Okay. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Anything else?
I think that's it for me tonight.
Thank you. Tim?
Two items. We have made a motion, a referral to Parks and Rec in the past to look at connectivity of our trails. And it's been a while since we've heard from them. And I'd like to request, and Steve, I'll let you sort of guide me on this, that we would put that on a future agenda, looking at city options for improving trail connectivity.
Do you mean specifically the Skunk River Trail or?
So along the East River Valley Park, but there may be some other areas that would be logical places for the gaps in our trail system we need to connect.
And also the status of them, why we're not moving ahead,
Correct.
right?
Oh, second.
Correct.
Second.
Okay, moved to second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Anything else?
And a congratulations to Iowa State men's and women's basketball teams being in the big dance. So can't not acknowledge that. So very exciting week for us.
Thank you. Anita?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Amber?
Nothing for me.
Tonight.
Nothing for me.
Tabitha? All right. Very good. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.